for our latest episode of Heard It from a CISO. So I'm here with Jason from, can you pronounce your company name? Kaseya?
Kaseya.
Kaseya, okay. So we're here to talk about what it means to be starting a career in cybersecurity, whether that means entry-level jobs, whether it means being interested as a college student, or maybe you're long into the career you've had and you're pivoting into cybersecurity and you're maybe just thinking about it. There are a lot of resources online, but it's not every day that we get to hear from a CISO such as yourself. So I'd love if you could just introduce yourself and tell us about your background and the work you do as a CISO.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me. And I want to make sure I keep this as brief as possible because I really want to get into things that are going to help our listeners right now and their personal journey, which I know can be very different and sometimes very interesting and complex. But my name's Jason Manar. I've been in this field now, oh gosh, well over 2 decades. I got my start in the FBI, and back before data aggregation and being a data geek was really cool, or maybe it's still not cool, I was doing a lot of that. And it was helping me solve cases, and the FBI actually took notice. And when they saw uh, some of the things that I was doing with data, which now are not as unique as they were back, 20 years ago, uh, they at that time said, "Hey, we need somebody that thinks that way around data in our cybersecurity program." And that's how I started my cybersecurity journey. And I worked over 1,000 different intrusions in the FBI. Got to work with the world's best and some of the worst CISOs around the world within those 1,000 different intrusions, and got to see what really worked well, what didn't work well, and still have some of my network. Still, I maintain that network and have some of the greatest relationships around the world with security practitioners. And it's really interesting because it really is a small world when you start talking about security practitioners around the globe. And so that's kind of a 30-second, real quick, how I got into security, and then obviously became the CISO of Kaseya about 4 years ago.
So you talk about your past experience working with the FBI, and I read about this that you assisted your current company with a ransomware attack. Could you talk about that and if that was like kind of the catalyst as to why you decided to join your current company? What went on there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So what happened was in my love of data sets and in finding cybersecurity, I fell in love with cybersecurity. I fell in love with understanding what adversarial activity looked like on a daily basis and how that was changing and how they were manipulating people's psychology and behaviors to get into systems, which are still being done today with social engineering, along with some of the very specific things and technical aspects that incorporate what we understand as being 0 days and nation state activities. So I just really found that very, very interesting. And because of that, went deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of cybersecurity. And in specializing in that within the FBI, I was very fortunate, like I said, to work many, many intrusions and be involved in many cases due to that level of expertise and that knowledge set, and rose through the ranks of the FBI. And when the Kaseya event happened, what essentially happened was I had an opportunity to come over to Kaseya, and I had some very wise people around me because I had had many offers uh, before Kaseya that I had turned down to get into the private sector because I felt like I had to do my 20 years of government service so I could get my credentials on a wall and look at it. And that was quote unquote successful. But I was very fortunate to have some wonderful mentors around me that were quick to point out a lot of the successes that I'd had that, quite frankly, many people never get to experience within the FBI. And I realized that, I didn't need something hanging on my wall for me to have, had success and start that new chapter. And so I credit those relationships as well as, my own personal faith in leading me to, make that jump from public sector to private sector. And I've been very blessed to, work with some of the greatest people around the world in the public and private sector. You're working with a lot of the same people because, like I said, it's a very small community.
Yeah. So, with that being said, I mean, even though it's a small community, I'm not sure a lot of entry level students or career professionals maybe know the difference between in cybersecurity working in the private sector versus working in the public sector. Could you talk about some noticeable differences that you've seen?
Yeah. Uh, so, one, the barrier to entry with certain governmental jobs and certifications and experience it sometimes is going to be higher. And the reason that I say this is uh, I, as well as several other CISOs, pride ourselves of finding cybersecurity talent in unconventional places. Um, I I won't name the CISO because I don't know whether he would want me to name him or not. But a
Mm-hmm.
Fortune 100 company CISO and I were talking, and when we were talking about some of the hires, one of the hires that he was most proud of was somebody in their finance team. And it was somebody that thought about the business and cybersecurity very differently. And they were trying to get into cybersecurity as basically a second career. Um, they had the opportunity um, to see some of the cybersecurity professionals within their company in action. It caused them to start doing some research on their own, and then kudos to this employee. They reached out to the CISO and had an interview, and shortly after was asked to join the team with the entry level position. And this person absolutely thrived. And they brought a new perspective because of their financial background that actually helped them reevaluate and actually explain risk better to the business because of her financial background. And so I like to do the same thing. We have several people, internally that we have promoted from areas of, customer service, areas of engineering, areas of R&D that have that um, shared love of cybersecurity that they have gleaned or gained over the years and have turned themselves into wonderful cybersecurity practitioners.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what would you say is the best way for someone to enter this field? Because what you're talking about, this example you just gave, somebody is clearly pivoting into cybersecurity when they've already had maybe an extensive career behind them. Um, so clearly, there are a lot of different paths. Some people pursue degrees in this field, some really prioritize certifications. What would you say maybe
Yeah.
is their best bet?
The wonderful thing about cybersecurity is it's not one size fits all, right? There's many different paths that can lead you to similar outcomes. What I would say is I think back as to some of the unconventional hires that we hired. I had someone that took the initiative to literally just come meet me. Had never been in cybersecurity before, had not had any certifications, but had this really strong passion for learning new things, developing new skills, was able during the interview to convey how he very much was able to take things that he had just learned and action them very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is all things that we're looking for um, for especially junior and new employees. And he has quickly become just an absolute stellar employee and rose through the ranks of, junior to senior analyst in a very short order. And to your point, has gotten in, wound up taking numerous online courses, obtained numerous certifications, and just done a wonderful job. Now, likewise, we've seen other people that not necessarily has gone the traditional path. I have an executive right now that doesn't have any of those certifications, but has a very vast engineering program management background, as well as security background as an analyst, an architect, has done numerous things that has allowed him to gain the ability to quickly understand almost every facet within cybersecurity that allows him great depth and breadth across uh, almost the entirety of our cybersecurity program. So while he doesn't maintain any current certs, he has had that experience that has been invaluable, and I would say more so than a certification. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not to say certifications don't have their place and aren't useful. It's just to say that there are many different roads that may lead you to the same place.
Yeah. So you mentioned this story about somebody who worked in finance and then transitioned into cybersecurity, and what you just mentioned was somebody who maybe had experience in um, management and then came into cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is obviously seen as like a very technical field, and perhaps it is, but what would you say to those who want to work in this field, but maybe want to work in the intersection of business and cybersecurity? Are there roles for them out there? What should they look for?
Yeah, so there's absolutely roles. So let's start by the things that I see that um, actually preclude someone from a certain position. And what that is I will see a lot of very, very good technical people that don't have the soft skills that allow them to be able to talk to other departments within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, within security, while we may have certain positions that are somewhat isolated from the rest of the organization, a lot of our security practices rely upon our ability to influence others to ensure that they are meeting the needs of the company, that they are following policies, standards, that they are following, that we are communicating the risk to them appropriately in a way in which they understand. Um, so, while that's not true at all levels, what I often see is I don't, I see people that very quickly don't understand how to necessarily interview
Mm-hmm.
or how to necessarily oftentimes show that they have some wonderful communication skills. I understand everyone will get nervous. I understand everyone will get tripped up. I'm sure even as many times as you've interviewed people, knowing that this is going to go to thousands of people, you
Yeah,
probably get a little butterfly every once in a while,
for
or
sure.
especially if you pause too long or say something. We all get those. And one of the things that helps us a lot is preparedness and understanding at the end of the day, one, whatever we are interviewing for, it's not personal. They may be looking for a unicorn. They may be looking for whatever else. But it is making sure that we bring the best representation of ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it's making sure that we're able to have a conversation around not only the technical areas that we need to, but also communicating some of the things that we've gone through. One of the best questions that I ask to get a sense of how people deal with things is just a very simple question about tell me about one of the most difficult periods of your life and how you got through that. And that can be an example of something that's happened in business, personal life, or anything else. And I've gotten some wonderful answers, both on the personal side, business side, as well as on the school side. But what I absolutely don't like is when somebody comes in and goes, "Yeah, I had at the end of this year the a project, and people weren't pulling their weight, so I did everything, and I turned it in, and we got an A." And while I guess for some people they think that that is showing that they are taking on certain responsibility, but it shows me that you're not communicating with your team. You're not having difficult conversations with people, and I also push back and I go, okay, is this really, in your 20 years of life, the most difficult thing that you've experienced, or is it just something difficult that you've experienced in the last 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
And typically they'll go, oh, no, that's not it. And then they'll share something else. Or some people double down and go, yeah, that's the most difficult thing I've been faced with. And then when I tell them a little bit more, especially around certain SOC positions, about some of the stress and some of the environment there and the challenges that are there day in and day out, I find that a lot of people haven't done their full research. And what we find is that in insecurity, um, insecurity, we find that it is one of the more stressful jobs that one can ever have. And oftentimes you see uh, issues coming out of security uh, professions and teams that
Mm-hmm.
are almost as high as that of first responders. And we all know what first responders go through. But I find people that are getting into this sometimes are like my son when he first learned about some remote security jobs. He goes, Dad, you're in security. You never told me that you could potentially be remote and you could make X amount of money. And I go, yeah. I said, tell me what job that is. And he told me what job it was. And I go, now, I said, look at the job description. You're going to be on call. You're going to be responsible um, to ensure. And I start walking him through the entire process of what he's going to be responsible for and how he's going to be the front line and how he may be, the sole practitioner between him, you know, uh, him, their company, and the adversary. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's way too much stress. I can't handle that. And I'm like, well, you could. It's just, you know, you need to be prepared for it. So I want to make sure people that are listening, do some research and go into things eyes wide open. There are some wonderful things and opportunities that come with being cybersecurity practitioners, but it is not for the faint of heart. It is very, very stressful at almost all levels. It is high stress, but very high reward. We are protecting some of the most critical infrastructure that this world has to offer, and we provide, resources to various companies that are literally keeping the lights on, educating the public, providing healthcare services. Um, those are all things that the majority of us in the software business do day in and day out as security practitioners. But at the end of the day, that comes at a very high cost because you realize that, if you make a mistake, if you don't take this job seriously, there are serious repercussions. And so that's one of the reasons that both on my team and throughout the company, we take mental health very seriously, and we make sure that people are taking time for themselves, away from themselves, and that we are talking about, the daily stressors, that come with this job, because there is a severe burnout rate within the cybersecurity industry. All you have to do is look at it. Look, you can pull that up online, but it's one of those things where I don't think enough people look at that aspect before they apply. They look at the potential remote, potential salary, and potential opportunity. And then, to your point, they may be 3 certifications in, even a bachelor's or master's degree in, and then feel trapped. And then at the end of the day, that's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for the company. And we want to make sure that your listeners know exactly what they're getting into.
Right. Yeah. So, to your point about how essential and critical cybersecurity is as a field and as a profession, um, it's clear, I mean, within technology as a whole, that anything in technology is quickly changing, quickly advancing. Um, and I certainly know that some people are quite worried about what that means for some of these entry level jobs, say with AI, and how maybe it's replacing some of the job responsibilities that these entry level roles require. What could you say about that?
So I think there's going to be new opportunities in AI, right? There will be new opportunities, and you see this now with various engineering positions where there are more positions for generative AI and new positions within engineering. So, is there consolidation that may take place with entry or junior level jobs? Yes, I, absolutely. Will there still be some type of junior job or entry level job? There will. I just think that's going to be redefined as to what that is, right? And it's going to require people to really think about the experiences that they have. One of the things that there are very few things that I would change if I could go back in time. But one of the things that I would probably change if I could go back in time was, you know, my time in college. I spent a lot of time working very hard in uh, factory farm work, labor intensive work, to pay some bills. Um, had I known what I know now, what I would do to try to find uh, even a lowly paid internship within the industry that I would want to go into, I would really try to get that more than anything. And what I have found is people that have even been in our internship program have been given vastly different opportunities to interview for positions that they hadn't just 6 months prior. And so I think finding ways of getting experience within your industry is going to help you immensely. And then understanding that, you know, there may be times that you can't get a job within uh, Google, Microsoft, even a company like Kaseya, and I may need to start at a MSP or an IT firm, or may need to start at my local university and help their IT or security program. There are ways of getting experience that will not that will allow you to surpass that junior title. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to think about how do we get that experience, obtain that experience, and so that we are ready, um, and that we don't get caught up in the AI revolution and the potential, downsizing that may come from the efficiencies that we see within the AI realm.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of my interview with Jessica Sika, who's CISO at Weave. She was talking about how um, she first got started because she was working, I think, at like a help desk when she was younger in terms of like IT stuff, and that's how she started going up the ranks. So, I mean, I guess you would say that like it's really just like getting your in and getting experience in the field, I think, is what you're saying. But yeah, that's great to hear, I think, for people. And something you mentioned earlier about transitioning from the public sector to the private sector is listening to the guidance of your mentors. And I know that that's a big thing in any field, really. But, you know, right now in cybersecurity, what would you say about how to look for a mentor and what to look for